Alright guys, 2.2, so Friday night. My collection is a few hours away, but I'm going to make this video ahead of time, just so my teammates have a game plan going into it instead of 4 hours after the fact. We're going to accomplish one of three things on this collection, and whatever we don't accomplish in this collection, we're going to accomplish tomorrow morning, so it's not a huge deal which order you do these things in. By tomorrow morning, the third option is kind of a worst case scenario, so it's going to be one of two ideal solutions. And whichever one you don't do tonight, you're going to do tomorrow. So it's not a huge deal which order you do it in. But depending on the collection that you get from your main city, as well as the resources that you have before you start the collection, is going to determine which path makes the most sense. So option plant a bakery is going to be option number one. The criteria is obviously that you generate more than 1,000 alloy from the 2-2 collection. The conditions for choosing this would be if you haven't built your bakery yet, so if you did not build it in 2.1, or if you have built your bakery already, but you have less than 300,000 supplies available before you start your collection. We're going to get a bunch of supplies from the collection, and I'm going to explain that process to you guys as well. But if you, before you do the collection, if you have less than 300,000 in available supplies, prioritize building your second baker from the 2-2 collection, or if you haven't built it yet, in that case it would be your first baker. But those would be the two conditions where you would prioritize building a bakery after the collection 2-2. Goal number two, the alternative goal, is going to be a pair of cartographer. We need 1,000 alloy for this option as well, and the conditions for this route would be that your baker is already built, you already have one of them built, and you have more than 300,000 available supplies before you start the collection. The 300,000, you could fudge that a little bit, that's up to your discretion, but the pair of cartographers is going to cost 400,000 in supplies, and we are going to get some supplies from the collection once we collect the bakery, but the supplies that we need, the difference from 400,000 to 300,000, the difference that the little bit of surplus that we're able to get out of that does need to be invested tomorrow towards the next step. So if you have substantially less than 300,000, go with the second baker. If you have a comfortable amount of supplies from Ascended stuff, or if you've been getting supplies from the map and you have a comfortable amount over 300,000, go with the two cartographers. I'm going to come back and explain each one of these options a little bit more in detail. Option number three is going to be worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, you end up with less than 1,000 alloy from this the 2-2 collection, which is really not a big deal. The correct way forward from there would just to plant a couple gallows, one or two, depending on the amount that you generate in alloy. Here's the little formula down here. And then you'll be caught up Saturday morning. So 3.1, you'll be able to catch up. So objective of 2.2 and 3.1 is to either build one bakery or your second bakery, depending on where you're at, or two cartographers. And between 2.2 and 3.1, we will accomplish both of those objectives. So if you fall into this third category, your goal is to basically conserve most of your alloy from this collection, and then you'll be able to catch up on 3.1 and accomplish both the bakery as well as the cartographer. So the formula for that is take the alloy that you get from your collection and mind the gap there. Don't calculate the total alloy that you have available. Calculate how much you actually collect. Multiply that number by 2 and then subtract 1,500. So let's say you collect 950 alloy, so just shy of the 1,000. Dang it. Alright, well, multiply that by 2, so you have 1,900 minus 1,500 equals 400. So plant 4 gallows with your 400 alloy. So you would save 550 from this collection, and then the difference, what you need, is 1,500. You'll get that tomorrow morning. And then from there, you'll be able to plant. The 1,500 comes from the cost of one bakery and one cartographer. So that would get you back on track in the scenario number 3. All right, so between option 1 and 2, we're either going to plant a pair of cartographers or the first bakery if you haven't, and if you already have one bakery, you'll plant the second bakery. It doesn't really matter which order you do it in because between 2-2 and 3-1 will accomplish both of those things. But I think the cartographer pair has a slight advantage on alloy. The trade-off though is supplies. So if you have less than 300 supplies when you start your collection, go with the second baker just to be safe. But if you have a comfortable amount of supplies, we can delay the second baker and use the cartographers to increase our alloy production um, in the immediate future. Bakery is going to add 375 when it's collected at full happiness. So on paper, bakery is going to increase our alloy production by a big number, right, on paper. But it's also going to remove, just the footprint of it, is going to remove the collection of 4 houses that would potentially also be collected at 150%, generating 60 alloy. So on paper, it generates 375, but in reality, it actually generates 315 once we remove the benefit of the houses that it displaces. But more importantly, the pair of cartographers will replace the footprint of 11 churches throughout the collect and delete process. So instead of starting our collection at 60% happiness, getting 6 alloy off of these houses, we'll be starting our collection at 120% and only have to delete like 5 or 6 of them before we hit the 150% mark. So the cartographer is a huge jump on the happiness metric, and so the alloy increase with the cartographer pair depends on how many expansions you got, so it depends on how many houses you're actually collecting alloy from. But roughly between 450 to 600 would be the alloy increase from the cartographer pair versus the 300 from the baker, the first baker or your second baker, depending on where you're at. But the cartographer pair is going to add about 600. So if you are comfortable on supplies, I've got 435. So that alone will cover the supply cost of the 2 cartographers, and then whatever I get from collection from the baker tonight will be applied to tomorrow's objective. So it doesn't really matter which way you do it. I'm probably going to do the cartographers tonight, but then I'll do the second baker tomorrow morning. So either way, we're going to accomplish both of those things by 3-1. I strongly recommend the cartographer over the pillory for this particular step. In the end phase, if it really doesn't matter which one you use, if you use cartographer or pillory, actions per hour per tile are the same on both of them, so you're going to get the same number of actions whether you use cartographer or pillory. That doesn't really matter. Pillory is slightly cheaper on supplies, so you might be tempted to go that route if you're under the supply, that 300,000 supply mark. I wouldn't recommend it. Just get your second bakery and then do the cartographers tomorrow. The reason why I recommend the cartographer for this particular part of the process is because it's more efficient on happiness per alloy. So in the end, all we care about is actions per square, right? And either one of those fits the bill. But in the development stage, what we care about is production value per alloy spent. So if you got to spend 500 alloy on either a cartographer or a pillory, your 500 alloy is better spent on the cartographer because it's more happiness per alloy, not necessarily per square, but per alloy, and that's the hurdle in the developmental stage, right? So in a nutshell, the roadmap for the next 2 collections. So after 3.1, here's where we should be. We should have 2 cartographers, and then 1 or 2 bakers, and it doesn't necessarily matter which order you do this in. You'll maximize your alloy a little bit if you do the cartographers first, but in the grand scheme of things, it's really not going to matter a whole lot. The main goal is that after 3.1, we have at least 1 baker and 2 cartographers. From here, the system actually becomes self-sustaining. The cartographers remove 99% of the need for churches. So as we collect and delete housing, just collect and delete houses and go straight into planning breweries as the temporary collection mechanism, and then collect your bakers with the supply boost of the breweries. And with the baker in place, we're getting a ton of supplies because it's being multiplied by the breweries during collection, as well as a ton of alloy. So the alloy that we're collecting from houses is now primarily at 150%. So we're generating a lot of alloy from the houses, and we're generating a lot of supplies from the bakery. And at that point, it becomes pretty much self-sustaining to where you will comfortably get 1,500 alloy per collection just on these developing stages. And plan a bakery one day, plan a clapboard house the next collection, rinse and repeat until you're comfortable deleting everything for pillars. Worst case scenario is option number 3, like I said, where you haven't planted a bakery yet and you get less than 1,000 alloy from the 2-2 collection. Not a big deal, just save at least 1,500 of your alloy between 2.2 and 3.1 so that you'll be able to get one baker and one cartographer, and then you're pretty much right on track. So not a big deal there. All right, that's it for the sneak peek. I'm going to upload this to YouTube just so my teammates have a little bit of head start coming into the collection. So I'll record the collection once we actually get there. But talk to you guys soon. Bye.